you can see many researchers and the scientists. They are working in the laboratories, as well as also some of them are actively involved in uh, some online sessions or the second. Excuse me, there is some technical. Is the online? Yeah, I hope now I'll be able to move the slide now. Yeah. So the overview here, the task of writing any research paper that can be daunting. Even with the groundbreaking research, unless your paper is correctly written, at the best the publication will be delayed, or at the worst case, the publication it may not publish at all. And this presentation will provide an overview of the research ethics as well as the misconducts in the research. So if I ask a question to any of the researcher or the scientist or a faculty member who are present over here, what is the motivation to write the research publication? So this is actually a worldwide survey which was conducted by some agency. And according to them, approximately 54% of researchers, the main motivation for them to publish the research publication is for the dissemination. They want to give a wide publicity or dissemination to their ongoing research. So this is the first choice with the about approximately 54%. This may slightly vary, and this is not with respect to any of the branches, like not only restricted to chemistry or physics or mechanical engineering or civil engineering, but this is overall. This survey was conducted overall among the researchers, including the medical people also. Then approximately about 20% of the researchers, so according to them, the first choice was career prospects. So in terms of the career prospect, to get a better job or to get a fresh job. So from the career prospect point of view, then about 13% of the researchers with the first choice with the improved funding. They want to increase their research funding. So that is only the, for that, with the more publication, only the funding can be improved. And then approximately, you may be surprised to know this, approximately 9% of the researchers with the first choice because of the ego. Let me give one example for this one. Suppose the ego in the research publications is in the sense, suppose if one researcher or maybe a faculty member from a small a small institution or a small college, suppose if he or she publish their research in some reputed journal, and at the same time another researcher who is sitting in another reputed institution, so they will think that, oh, the person in sitting in such a small college, he is publishing, so I also have to publish. So this is nothing but this is purely with the ego. And then approximately 4% with the first choice as a patent protection. Because here in countries like India, as well as other developing countries, as well as underdeveloping countries, the patent filing is, again, it's an expensive task. In India itself, to file a patent, at least the expenses will be about 40 to 50,000 rupees. 40 to 50,000 rupees for filing a patent. Suppose if there is no funding is not available, then what to do? There is, the researcher may feel that some other person who is sitting in the another university or in another state or in another place may come out with the same invention, and that person may get the patent. So in order to protect it from the patent, from particularly, that means by preventing others to file a patent on the same topic or on the same innovation or on the same research, the best thing is just publish it. Just publish it in a journal so that nobody can patent it, at least in India. Of course, for the US patent, there are some relaxations are there. That means from the date of publication of maximum up to the 1 year, within that period, if it is published, then that can be US patent is possible. But in Indian patent system, even if a small abstract related to the that particular research, if it is published in some conference or in any of the uh, um, in the public media, in such case, that research, entire research cannot be filed in Indian patent. So that if I don't have sufficient amount of funding, but I want to protect the whatever the work which I have done, so what I'll do, I'll just publish that so that others cannot, other Indian researchers, they can't file the patent on that. So this is for the patent protection. And others with the various reasons, approximately about 5%. Then from the author publishing priorities are particularly the quality as well as the speed. The top items which included under this one are referring speed. That means when we communicate a publication or a manuscript to any of the journal, we'll see what is the approximate referring speed, reviewing speed also you can say. Then what is the reviewing standard, referring or the reviewing standard. And also the authors, they will also look at the journal reputation. So these are the mainly the quality, and in terms of quality and speed, the top items are the referee speed, and then referee standard, as well as the journal reputation. And then as an author, and as a reader, we'll see what are the behaviors of both the author versus the readers. So suppose if I'm myself as an author, so I want to publish more and more. Then peer review is, which is definitely it is essential. Then other journal functions which are also crucial, and also I want to give the very wide dissemination. Suppose if I'm a reader, for any of the journal, so as a reader, what we do, we always want to read less and less, as far as possible, very less and less. So that means as an author as well as an reader, so we want to, author always want to publish or to write more and more, and at the same time as a reader, we always want to read less and less. So as an reader or as an author, we always have to keep a balancing between this. Then the differences here, mainly the authors are journal focused. Authors are journal focused. That means we look for what quality of the journal it is. What is the impact factor of the journal? What are the citations by that particular journal? What is the reputation of the journal? So these are the important points for the authors. Whereas the readers are article focused. That means they are not bothered about what type of journal, or whether it is a high impact or the low impact, but they are actually article focused. So publish more and read less. So this type of dichotomy always which lies. That means a proper balancing is, that is the major responsibility of any of the authors. And of course, as you may be aware, the key elements in publishing, the ethical issues. So here the ethical issues are with respect to, that means pertaining to this particular slide, the ethical issues are only with respect to the journal. Okay. Whereas the entire talk, this is on the research ethics. So that will be discussing at the later stage. So now it is with the ethical issues with respect to the particular publication itself. Then the style and the language, the structure of the paper, the components of the paper, and the article submission or the journal selection, then the publisher's process, at what speed the journals will be, the publishers, they will be processing our articles, and what is the speed of the peer review. So all these are the key elements of the any of the publication. And with respect to the any of the individual journal, any journal, let it be, the ethical issues, mainly the disclosure of the conflict of interest. So nowadays, it's almost like it is a mandatory. The most of the majority of the journals, they have made it mandatory because of the now the system is more or less 99% journal publication, journal communications, manuscript communications are, these are through the online submission only. So now they have made almost 99% of the journals, they have made it mandatory to disclose if there is any conflict of interest are there. As an authors, we have to always, we need to disclose if there are any conflict of interest in the that pertaining to the that particular article or manuscript. Then always one need to acknowledge the funding sources, whether the funding may be from your institute or it may be from any of the funding agencies, that always the acknowledgement need to be given. Then image manipulation guidelines. That means if you have used one of the any of the a diagram, or it may be the graph which was from the any other journal, and you want to use the same thing, so in such case directly you are not supposed to use. So you need to obtain the license from the concerned, where in whichever journal it is published, you need to take the uh, consent from the that particular journal, and also you need to give the you need to cite, or the reference has to be given. So as it is, you cannot, as per the ethics, you cannot straight away, you can't include the others pictures as if this is your own figure or the graph or any of the diagram. So the guidelines suitable, whatever the guidelines are there, image manipulation guidelines, and almost all of the journal they give, they'll clearly mention in the author's guidelines where the image manipulation guidelines will be there. So that need to be strictly followed. And then of course, with the online submission nowadays, it is always better to give the supplemental information, or if there are any data sets or the any of the videos or more diagrams or more experimental pictures. So all those things which can be uploaded as additional information under the supplemental information or the supplementary materials. In case of health sciences, which includes both medical as well as the dental, where the submission of a clinical trials to a central registry, which is mandatory, and also the institutional review board approval. If the any such, if the individual institution is having any such review board, their approval is required, or any such a centrally registered any such institutions are there for particularly for the health sciences. So their guidelines or the approval has to be, that is mandatory. And then again, including the, while including the authors also, there also ethics need to be followed. So please include only those authors who have made an intellectual contribution to your research. Just someone sitting in abroad, or some of your friend or any colleague or your student who is in uh, some reputed institution or a university. So if they have not contributed anything, so please don't include the names of any such authors in your manuscript. If they have contributed, then definitely you can include their name, but you need to take the consent from the, that is also the ethics only, that is also the publication ethics. So while introducing the, including the name of any authors, so all the authors need to give the consent to the corresponding author, or those who will publicly defend the data and conclusion and who have approved the final version. So at least that has to be done. and the order of the names of the author, which can vary from discipline to discipline. So usually the in the research ethics, so of course there is no any, it's not any mandatory, but generally what we do, the first author that will be indicates, generally that indicates the uh, the direct contribution made to the for that particular research, maybe generally as a PhD scholar or a PhD student or a postdoc or a master or the graduate student. And then the corresponding author will be generally the supervisor. The research supervisor will be generally the corresponding author. But of course, it may vary from one discipline to the other discipline. And of course, the structure of a paper, I don't want to speak more on this one. So the journals, they want to publish in the honest, reproducible data without data fabrication, falsification, duplication, and salami slice or the plagiarism. I'll repeat it again. Any of the journal, whether it may be highly reputed journal or with a very small impact factor or with a very low impact factor. So they want to publish the research publications or the research data which are reproducible one, which are reproducible one, and those data or the manuscripts are without any sort of fabrication, falsification, and the duplication or the plagiarism, or it's nothing but the salami slice. So that is the policy of the any of the journals. And studies in the human beings which need to be comply with the international norms for the ethical approval and informed consent. The studies need to comply to international reporting guidelines. Like there are different international reporting guidelines are there. Say for example, consort or strobe or care process, etc. So these are either in the UK or US or Singapore. So each of these countries, the nations, they have their own such type of the guidelines they have framed. Of course, such guidelines is very much required in India also. Of course, in the coming years, maybe those type of guidelines, maybe a detailed international standard guidelines, maybe they may available to Indian researchers also. It is very much essential. The ethic principles, being a researcher or as a scientist or as a author for any of the publication, so following the ethics principles, this is very, very important. Even if you are not publishing a publication, don't worry. But if you are following the research ethics, so that is much, much important than publishing any publication without any sort of ethics. So you need to ensure the dignity, the safety, and privacy of all participants. All participants here in the sense, all the authors as well as the co-authors of that particular manuscript. Then the national ethical, legal, and regulatory norms as well as the standards for research involving the human subject, nothing but related to the medical research, as well as applicable international norms and standards must be adhered. Suppose if there is some policy or guidelines which are issued by the uh, um, that nation or by that country, along with that the is also mandatory in some of the nations or in some of the uh, journal publication. The ethical review should occur before the study begins and the participants enroll. And assurance of the ethical review or the consent is required for the publication. This research integrity is also, this is also very, very important for all the researchers. It mainly includes the use of honest and verifiable methods in proposing, performing, and evaluating the research. proposing, performing, and evaluation of the research. Then reporting the research results with particular attention to adherence to regulations and the guidelines, and following commonly accepted professional codes as well as the professional norms. So these were the guidelines which have been given by National Institute of Health, which is known as NIH. It is one of the uh, worldwide reputed health related research institution of United States, NIH. In the United Kingdom, in UK, the UK Research Integrity Office, that is nothing but the UK RIO as a short form, which is an independent charity which offering support to the public, researchers and organization to further good practice in the academic, scientific and as well as the medical research. And they promote integrity and high ethical standards in research as well as robust and fair methods to address the poor practice and the misconduct. They also pursue these aims through their publications on the research practice, in depth support and service for the research employers, their education and training activities, and by providing the expert guidance in response to the request for assistance from the individual and organizations. This was established during the year 2006, and their aims are as follows. So promoting the good governance, good management, and conduct of academic and scientific medical research. Sharing good practice on how to address poor practice, misconducts, and unethical behavior. Give confidential, independent, and expert advice on the specific research projects, any of the research related cases, the problems, and the issues. So these are the responsibilities, aims, and the responsibilities of the United Kingdom Research Integrity Office. So this concordate, the another one is UUK, seeks to provide comprehensive national framework for the good research conduct and its governance. As signatories to and supporters of the Concordal, to support the research integrity, they are committed for maintaining the highest standard of rigor and integrity in all aspects of the research, ensuring that research is conducted according to appropriate ethical, legal, and professional frameworks, obligations, as well as standards, and supporting a research environment that is underpinned by a culture of integrity and based on good governance, best practice, and support for the development of the researchers, using transparent, robust, and fair process to deal with the allegations of the research misconduct whenever they arise, working together to strengthen the integrity of research, and to reviewing progress regulatory and openly. And for the Singapore, that is the Singapore Statement 2010. So honesty in maintaining the honesty in all aspect of research, whether it is in engineering, science, or healthcare divisions, whatever research it may be. So honesty. Then the second one is the accountability in while conducting the research. Accountability should be there. The professional courtesy and fairness in working with the others, and good stewardship of research on behalf of others. So these were the 4 points which are by the Singapore Statement 2010. So of course, these are the other the aims and the functions. I'll not go into this. These are the more or less the same one, like in other countries. The code of practice or the professional bodies. The Office of Research Integrity in United States, that is the one. There is the second such one is called as GMC. I forgot the full form of this one. It is the uh, at the international level, GMC. Then the Royal Society. This is particularly for the chemical and the material related research, that is by the code of practice or the professional bodies are for them the Royal Society. Similarly, the British Psychological Society. So these are the different code of they have their own code of practices or the for the betterment of the research. Then the promoting the integrity in research publication. So COPE, which is a forum for the editors and publishers of peer reviewed journals to discuss all aspects related to publication ethics. So this is mainly this particular body, the COPE, this body, this is mainly for the publishers and for the, this is not for the authors, but particularly for the editors and the uh, publication houses or the journals to discuss all aspects of publication ethics, and also it advises the editors on how to handle the cases of research and publication misconduct. Suppose if some papers, some manuscripts are, if there are some misconducts have been observed, then the scope will advise or they will guide, they give the guidelines to the editors of that particular journal how to handle such sort of publication misconduct. And then, as you know, whenever such sort of misconducts in the publications are observed, then it leads to the retraction. It leads to the retraction of the publication or the manuscript by the particular journal. So this the retraction watch, this is actually a blog. This is a blog that reports on retractions of scientific papers and on related topics. So topic wise, whether it's a chemistry, it's a physics, it's a material science, it's a bioscience, it's an civil engineering, mechanical engineering. So all these will be with respect to the related topics, the whatever the retraction which have been which have done for the manuscript, so that will be, that can be observed through the this particular blog, that is retraction watch. And this blog was launched during August 2010 and is produced by science writers the Ivan Orneski and Adam Marcus. The retraction database, this was further launched during the year 2018. So anybody can go through this blog, retractionwatch.com. Similarly, the another foundation is the PubBear Foundation. This is California-based registered public benefit corporation with the 501c3 non-profit status in the United States. And the current focus is maintaining and developing the PubBear online platform for the post-publication peer review. So this can be watched through the pubpeer.com/static/about. Then what are the consequences of this misconduct? So one thing is, the first part is the sanctions by the institutions and by the professional bodies, or they may dismiss the particular researcher. This is also very much serious in abroad, even to the extent of imprisonment. Imprisonment. Please remember the consequences of the research misconduct that may lead to even the misconduct, which may lead to the imprisonment. The adverse effects on reputation of the institution and their staff, and also on the co-authors. Suppose if a person XYZ, if his or her publication, if it gets retracted, so that will adversely affect, that may affect not only that particular researcher, but also the staff, the co-authors, that particular department or that institution, and even at the national level to the country also, that is a black spot. Not only that, the waste of the research money, or the it's a waste of the whatever the research grant which has been given. Then the expression of concern, the retraction or removal of the publication. So according to the this retraction watch database, there are approximately 17,000 plus publications have been retracted globally. And unfortunately, the major are from China as well as India. So this trend has been developed in last 7-8 years. In last 7-8 years, the trend has been significantly increased, particularly from India and China. So as a result of that, in last 2-3 years, most of the reputed journals, so they are looking at the Indian and the Chinese researchers with a great suspicion. So that may be the one of the reason for rejection of the increase in the rejection of the publications which are communicated by Indian and Chinese researchers. The data fabrication and the falsification. So it may be the completely fabricated. What do you mean by fabrication? Can anyone respond to this? Data fabrication. It is purely the word fabrication, that itself is self-explanatory. The word
Yes.
fabrication, that itself is a self-explanatory term here. So fabricating, there is nothing, no any research is not conducted, but the data have been completely taken, or just they have been included. So completely fabricated data set, alteration of the data set and the image, or it may be the entire manuscript may be fabricated one, or only in the datas, some of the datas from the other published papers might have been collected and changing the datas, only the datas, whereas the other written text part, that is the own contribution, but the data may be the fabricated one. Or the image manipulation. So some others figures, already published figures or the pictures or the charts or the graphs, so these may be making some alteration and then publishing that one as your own image or the graph or a part of that manuscript. So that is termed as image manipulation. So data fabrication and the and falsification. So the data fabrication, so this concerns the making up of research findings. Whereas the data falsification, this is nothing but the manipulating the research data with the intention of giving a false impression. And this includes manipulating images like the micrograph or the GELFs or the radiological or any other images, removing outliers or inconvenient results, changing, adding or omitting the data points, etc. So all these are nothing but the falsification, part of the falsification. And with regard to the image manipulation, it is allowed technically, it is permitted. To some extent, technically it is permitted. That is the, if you follow the research ethics, then what you need to do is, whatever the changes which have been made in the original image, you need to take the approval from the original author as well as the from the particular journal where it was published. And while communicating it to the fresh manuscript, in the covering letter, you need to mention it very clearly to the editor. Clearly, it need to be mentioned what changes which were made in the this revised figure or in the graph, what changes have been made, and also you need to cite the original diagram or the original figure that need to be cited. So that is the research ethics. So one has to follow, in such case, the image manipulation, which can be under certain extent it is permitted with the, if you follow the this research ethics. And the duplicate salami slice submission. So unlike duplicate publication, which involves reporting the exact same data in two or more publications. So what do you mean by duplicate publication here? Which is nothing but reporting the exact same data in the two or more publication. Same data has been presented in the many journals, many manuscripts. Whereas the salami slicing, this is nothing but it involves breaking up or segmenting. Segmenting is the making it into small fractions, a large study into two or more publications. A large single study which will be sliced, means made into small pieces, 2, 3 or 4 pieces, and then publishing. So these segments are referred to as slices of a study. And as a general rule, as long as the slices of a broken up study which share the same hypothesis or the population and the research methods, this is not acceptable practice. So this is not a research ethics again. The same slice should never be published more than once. The reason, according to the United States Office of Research Integrity, the salami slicing can result in a distortion of the literature by leading unsuspecting the readers to believe that data presented in each salami slice is derived from a different subject sample. This is not skews the scientific database, but it creates repetition that wastes the reader's time as well as the time of the editors and the reviewers who must handle each paper separately. So it is nothing but it's a waste of time for the readers, the editors, as well as the reviewers, because all of these people, they were handling this manuscript individually. Further, it unfairly inflates the author's citation record. That will also affect the citation index of the respective author. There are instances where data from the large clinical trials and epidemiological studies that cannot be published simultaneously, or such that they address the different and distinct questions with the multiple and unrelated endpoints. In such cases, it is legitimate to describe important outcomes of the studies in a separate way. So it need to be explained in a separately. However, each of the paper that should clearly define its a hypothesis and to be presented as one section of much larger studies. Most of the journal, they request that authors who either know or suspect the manuscript submitted for the publication, which represents fragmented data, should disclose this information, as well as enclose any other papers like the published or the unpublished that might be part of the paper under the consideration. So effects of let us see the effects of this fabricated data. So this is with respect to the medical research. Okay, the journal by name Lancet. It is one of the high impact factor journal. The Lancet paper, that was a case series of 12 child patients. It reported a proposed new syndrome of enterocolitis and regressive autism, and associated this with the MMR as an apparent precipitating event. But in fact, actually, 3 of 9 children reported with the regressive autism did not have autism diagnosed at all. Only one child clearly had a regressive autism. Despite the paper claiming that 12 children were previously normal, 5 had documented pre-existing developmental concern. So this was one of the manuscript which was published in the Lancet. So that was during the year 1998. This paper was further retracted during the year 2010. So this was published in the 1998. It's about the disorders in the children, but actually in the reality it was not at all like that. So later during the 2010, this particular manuscript was retracted. Let me present one more international uh, researcher, Dr. Jamal. She did her PhD from University of Toronto in the field of uh, endocrinology. In the field of it is again with respect to in the biology field, in the field of endocrinology. And she was also doing her research in the field of at the later stage when she joined as an independent faculty or as a researcher in one of the research organization in uh, Canada. She also started working in the field of the osteoporosis. The files she submitted to the University of Toronto inquiry were files she personally manipulated and not the original files of her research associate as she claimed. She illegally assessed the patient records to alter the data and destroy and change the computer files. And she disposed of an old computer so the forensic computer expert could not examine it. See, she tried to, whatever the evidences were there, she tried to destroy all those evidences, including the computer which she used for while fabricating or while uh, I can call it as a fabrication only because she completely included the data from it's a manipulated data. So whatever the computer she used, so that also she disposed of an old computer so that the forensics experts could not examine it. And she went into Canadian Blood Services facility and changed the freezer temperatures to damage even the blood sample and the urine sample in a strenuous attempt to cover up her deceptions during the investigation. So she don't wanted to keep any evidences for her fabricated this manuscript. And this prolonged deception and dishonesty is considered by the committee to constitute a serious professional misconduct against this Dr. Jamal, and her publication, which was retracted during the 29 January 2019. You can observe this in the retraction watch. One more Norwegian dentist, Dr. John Sudbo. Dr. John Sudbo. So he is a Norwegian scientist, a dentist and physician, and former medical researcher who was exposed as a scientific frauder during the year 2006. So he was exposed when he published his research finding in the journal Lancet during the 2005, a paper that claimed that long-term use of the anti-inflammatory drugs that could reduce the risk of the oral cancer in the smokers. A major phase 3 US funded preventive trial for the oral cancer to be led by Sudbo was planned to start in the 2006, was suspended just days before it was to start. And after that, whatever the ethical committee, after once his paper was, once it was retracted during the 2006. Then after that, the ethical committee, research ethical committee of that particular institution, so they only permitted him to work as a dentist, but not allowed to do any sort of research till 2036. That means for almost for about 30 years, he was debarred to do any sort of the research. So only thing he can just do only practice as a dentist, or as a dental surgeon. Only that part. But he was not allowed to do the research. He was debarred to do any kind of research for the next 29, 30 years. So this was during the 2006. Similarly, another the Japanese, again, these are also the medical practitioners, Sato and Iwamoto, the osteoporosis data fabrication. So this was again the fake trials lead to the real trials, which find no effect, or the meta-analysis and the guidelines which compromise. So, and the Sato actually the data fabrication for the many clinical trials leading to the retractions. So he was responsible for that. And the other guy, the Iwamoto, he was just a gift authorship. What do you mean by gift authorship? Can anyone? That means the author who is not having any sort of contribution for that particular paper, for for any such research manuscript, but he was just included as an author. So that is termed as, whenever that is what in the beginning I told you in the ethics, don't include unnecessarily others' names for the in the manuscript, as long as they have not contributed anything for your paper. Then his paper was again this paper that was again retracted, and this Sato, who died the circumstances for his death were still uncertain, and the Iwamoto, he was dismissed and works in another hospital. So osteoporosis, which actually affect 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men, the hip fracture has a high mortality. So their work was related to the osteoporosis. Then this is related to the periodic table of elements. This is in the chemistry. You can see here the technetium, the this element 43 Tc technetium. This was actually during the original image for this technetium, that was again taken by some researcher, and they have not followed the image manipulation guidelines. So again, this particular publication, this was retracted. This is actually the manipulated image. This image is manipulated image, whereas this is the original image which was published during the year 1925. So they would have included this manuscript, this particular image, if they would have followed the proper guidelines which are been given by that particular journal, or whatever the research ethics, whatever ethics are there while manipulating of the any such image, if they would have followed, then this manuscript would not have been retracted. Then the investigating misconduct, who will be investigated? The first part is the lead author. So in this particular manuscript, the periodic table related, the lead author is no longer alive. The other authors do not have any functional emails. The papers accepted when submissions were by a paper or an email, and all the records from this time no longer exist. No any records about this communication of this particular manuscript, including the original manuscript and the peer reviewers' comments also. And there is no named person or response from the institution. Even those institution where these researchers were belonging, they also not at all bother to respond. This is highly, it's an international level. It is nothing but misconduct of the by the institute also. So they should have properly responded. So they also not bother to uh, respond to the queries related to the this particular manuscript retraction, who have been requested to investigate. Then this one, these are some of the things which are quite common during the examination, the passing on the answer which is written on a small paper sheet, or jumping of the red light on the signals. The red lights are not hurdles. Why we have to jump them? So some of us, we don't mind in jumping of the red light. Or you see in this particular picture, in the third one, so it's like a kind of a pickpocketing, thefting. Okay. So these are nothing but these are all the research misconduct is much serious than all these type of the crimes. So what is it? The Department of Health and Human Services, which defines the research misconduct. This is from the United States, actually. Department of Health and Human Services from the United States. So according to them, it defines the research misconduct as it's the fabrication, falsification, or plagiarism in proposing, performing, or reviewing the research results. The fabrication, already I mentioned, it's nothing but making up the results and recording or reporting them. Falsification is nothing but the manipulation of the research materials or the equipments or the process, or changing or omitting the results such that the research is not accurately represented in the record. The plagiarism is the appropriation of the author's ideas or processes, results, or words without giving the proper credit. Just copying the same sentence and including in the our manuscript without any giving the credit or without giving the citation or the reference. So that is the plagiarism. So the purpose of research misconduct policies in any country, let it be in United States, UK, or Japan, or Canada, in any such countries, the overall purpose of having such type of the research misconduct policies are to establish definitions for the research misconduct, to outline the procedures for reporting and investigating the misconduct, and then to provide the protection for the whistleblowers and person accused of the misconduct. So whistleblowers are nothing but they are actually the people they who have found out that some other person has done the research misconduct. So they are termed as whistleblowers. So proper protection also to be given to the whistleblowers. Otherwise, the person whose publication which has been retracted, they may take some revenge on these whistleblowers. So this is another one. Let me just go to the ORI recommendation. So this is for the Office for Research Integrity. Office for the Research Integrity, their recommendation. Again, this is from the United States. It's a part of the research ethics. It's a part of the research ethics. So adopt a zero tolerance. Any academic institution or research organization, or it may be a college or any scientific laboratories, or it may be the hospital. So the policy should be adopt zero tolerance on such sort of fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. So such policy need to be implemented. So in abroad, most of the universities, they have already adopted such type of zero tolerance policy. Unfortunately, in India, still we are not aware about this zero tolerance on this one. Then the protecting the whistleblowers. So they should be protected. Then clarify how to report train the mentors. So all the faculties or the researchers and the students, so they need to be given proper training related to the research ethics. What is mean by this? How the that can be? What are the ethics need to be which are followed? Already those research ethics in the earlier slides which I have highlighted, and then model ethical behavior. So all these things to be, they are the recommendations of the Office of Research Integrity. How is misconduct is identified then? So the suspected and reported by it may be suspected or reported by any of the colleague of the paper from which organization which has been retracted, and failure to confirm the research results by whom? By own lab or the others. So in any research, in any experimental related research, in maybe science or engineering, again in the medical, the reproducibility is, this is very, very important. Reproducibility in your research, that is most important. Who will be investigated and who will be held accountable? Please remember, all the authors who are involved in that particular research paper which was retracted, they will be investigated. All the authors, including the student as well as the lead authors and the gift authors, all will be investigated. And who will be held accountable for this? The primary author. That means the first author. Generally, if they are the student, then they will be held accountable. And along with the primary author, who is the corresponding author? Nothing but the principal investigator or the corresponding author or the supervisor or the guide. And other authors whose results are found culpable. So they will be held accountable and the investigation will be done. So what are the responsibilities of the mentors? So mentors have the great responsibility to ensure that all trainers, like the graduate students or the postgraduate students or the post docs, they should be aware of the responsible conduct of the research. And define the relationship here. That is, what is the role of the trainee? Nothing but the students. What is uh, the publication and the authorship? Then serving as a principal investigator or the co-investigator, and obligation to report. So these are the some of the responsibilities, and strictly following the all the research ethics. That is the responsibilities which need to be followed by the mentors and the students or the participants of that particular research. So I'll be taking another 7 to 8 to 10 minutes, 7 to 8 minutes, and then because since I started about 15 minutes late, I'll be continuing till another 8 to 10 minutes, and thereafter you are free to discuss on any clarifications are there. You are free to discuss. Let us have the discussion from 4:15 onwards. So, what is plagiarism? This already I have defined it earlier. Let me define it once again. So, this is the presenting the words or ideas or images, or it may be the sounds or the creative expression of the others as your own. And this is as serious as imprisonment. So doing any such type of the plagiarism, it's a purely, it is a one of the research misconduct, and one of the impact of that, it may be imprisonment. And the word plagiarism, it came from it's a Latin word, that is plagiarus, that means kidnapper. So plagiarism, which is equal to kidnapper. And there are mainly two types in the this plagiarism. So one is intentional, and another one is unintentional. Suppose copying a researcher's work, let us see which are the intentional plagiarisms here. The copying a researcher's work, buying or borrowing the papers, cutting and pasting the blocks of the text from the electronic sources without any documenting, then media borrowing without any documentation. These are the intentional. Unintentionals are because of the careless paraphrasing, careless, poor documentation, failure to use your own voice. So my suggestion is, whenever any publication you are communicating it to any of the manuscript, please carry out a search for the plagiarism part. This need not be only for the research manuscript. Even the any of the project report by the your students, maybe the bachelor students, or maybe the MTech or the master students projects, or uh, the project reports, or the PhD thesis. PhD thesis, again, this is made mandatory, and in case of the even research publications also. So carry out a search using the plagiarism search, using the different softwares which are available. And again, my suggestion here is, use the only the very standard such a site type of the softwares. Say, for example, the Turnitin, which is one of the highly reputed plagiarism searching software. So of course licensing is required. If your institution is not having the license, then you can get it done from your any other friends who are having the license of this particular software. And then any publication, before communicating, so after doing this particular plagiarism check or the plagiarism search, it will show to what extent this manuscript has been plagiarized. It shows the similarities, 20%, 25%, 30%. So in any ways, please don't give the scope beyond 15%. 8 to 10% of 10%, 12%, up to 15%, these are permitted in most of the journals. Because the same sentences you might have constructed on your own while explaining the research methodology, or while conducting the particular experiment. So the similar sentences, so that will appear as a, that will be appeared as a similarity. So those are actually, those will not be considered. So for that reason only, about 10 to 15% of relaxation will be there. So under any circumstances, please do not keep the similarity value beyond 15%. So as far as possible, 10 to 12, 13%, which is very much ideal. Then why the people do the uh, plagiarism, and they'll seek the excuses? They may say that while writing the manuscript, this manuscript is very much boring, so I wanted to make it more attractive. So I have included some of the parts from the other manuscript. This manuscript was boring. It's okay if I don't get caught. So some people are with this particular mindset. Okay, if I'm including someone's work in my manuscript, this will be fine, as long as if I'll not be held together or held responsible. I was too busy to write that particular paper, maybe because of the job, or many other parallelly ongoing projects, or too much other homework for the students, right? Maybe writing many assignments for the students, and then they may not be able to give dedicated time for writing the manuscript. So they may give the such type of the reasons, such type of the excuses. Or my teachers may be expecting too much from my side. This is the, these are the some of the excuses by the research scholars, PhD scholars, or the master students. I have got to get into a certain position. So some of the faculty members, they will be in a hurry to get publications. So with some good manuscript or the publication, they can get a promotion, or they can move to the better position. So I have got it to, I got it to get into a certain better position. And some people with this mindset, everyone are doing some plagiarism, then why I should not do? That is the thing. And the consequences are uh, not worth the risk. So all these excuses are highly riskier. Please remember. So these are whatever the consequences which are because of the such a research misconducts, they are not at all. With that, one can understand that these whatever the risk which you have taken, these are not at all worth. And it is only right to give the credit to authors whose ideas you use, that already I have mentioned. Citing makes it possible for your readers to locate your source, and cheating is unethical behavior. Then how to avoid this plagiarism? Because in Indian, the most of the retracted paper from the Indians particularly, the majority are because of the plagiarized. And then second one is the fabricated. And then the falsification followed by the flag. So I'm just highlighting on the plagiarism, how to avoid this. So whenever any phrases or the sentences or the paragraphs which are taken from the any of the original sources, give the quotes, use the quotes, and quotes followed by the whatever the references or the citations are there, you give that. Quote and cite statistics, charts, graphs, and drawings taken directly from the original source. So this is very important, very, very important. Giving the citations. So that is the research ethics, minimum research ethics. When you are paraphrasing or summarizing, give credit to the original author. You may be taking the research methodology from some other manuscript. So give the credit to the original author of that particular research methodology. And always by using these following three strategies, to some extent you can minimize the plagiarism. So one is quoting, paraphrasing, summarizing. So quoting already I have mentioned. Then paraphrasing. You can write the same thing in your own words, giving the similar meaning, but the different sentences or different words. So that is the paraphrasing. And then summarizing the entire part. So that is also, with that also you can avoid the plagiarism. To blend source materials in in with uh, your own, making sure your own voice is heard. The quotations are the exact words of an author copied directly from a source, word for word, and quotation must be cited. Whatever these quotations are there, they must be cited. The paraphrasing, that means the putting someone else's words or ideas into your own words. So for this, first you try to understand the entire manuscript, and then with your own words, with your own sentences, those things can be, you can overcome the plagiarism. Although you are using your own words, the ideas are taken from the someone else and must be cited on your works cited page. So paraphrasing is not simply rearranging the or rewording an original passage. Just if you rearrange the words or the sentences, that is not the paraphrasing. So it should be the meaningful. It should be the meaningful one. So you have to understand what the author is saying and write the ideas entirely in your own words. So that is the paraphrasing. In the last slide, the conclusion in just two sentences. The ethics, research ethics, and research integrity, these are the integral to good research and publication, and not an option or regulatory burden. So this is the final conclusion. So I take this opportunity to thank the St. Joseph Engineering College, particularly Professor Sudhir, the Dean for uh, Research and Development at the SJSC, and his entire team. Thank you very much. If any questions or I'll try my best to answer or I'll try my best to clear your doubts.
Participants, you can unmute yourself and ask the questions.
Namaskar, sir. I'm Dr. Radhika Sharma from Jaipur. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, madam.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a query that whenever like we are writing a review article or usually a review article, less commonly a research article. So
Okay.
when we are doing the plagiarism check on a free plagiarism software or something, so at that time we get a lesser amount of flag. But when we get submitted, somehow the plagiarism goes up. Can you suggest a way to control that?
Madam, which software you are using for the plagiarism check?
Sir, at our university we have Turnitin.
Turnitin itself.
Yes, sir.
And the moment once you search through the Turnitin, after how many days you are communicating to the manuscript? Because sometimes what happens is even you might have carried out the Turnitin search, and maybe you may be communicating it after 15 days or a week later or a 15 days or so. So by that time, because this database is every day, this will be changing, whatever the database. So immediately as and when you complete the Turnitin check, soon after that, within 1 or 2 days, it is better to recommend it to communicate. Otherwise, suppose if you have done the Turnitin check today and it was showing something like 15%, and if you are communicating it after a week period, it may go to 17 or 18%. That may be possibilities are there.
Okay, so we should immediately submit after doing the plagiarism check without delay.
That is the best option. So within 1 or 2 days, if you communicate, that is the best way of avoiding those things.
And so one more question, can you suggest a few more plagiarism software, maybe, free of cost or online available?
Madam, actually, I am strongly recommending the Turnitin. There are other like Onkund, I think, which is also available. But the thing is, I'll just give one example. One of my student, because earlier in our institution, the Turnitin was the license was exhausted, so we were not able to use the Turnitin for few months. So during that time, one of my student he used some freely available software, and he showed the result as it was showing only 5% similarity. So I was very much happy that it has showed only 5%. Then, but still, I just wanted to make a cross check of that. So I have communicated that to my another friend in another institution, through whom I got it. I got the Turnitin report. It was showing about 45% or so, 40 or 45%. So that is the difference, madam. So I strongly recommend the Turnitin software.
Okay, sir, that is the same thing I have experienced. That's why I wanted to. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay, welcome.
Any other questions?
Yeah, am I audible? This is Dr.
Yes,
Nitish
yes.
from
Continue.
Manipal.
Yes, doctor.
Sir, I have one. So, for example, if you are writing a review article, say I have around 100 references.
Right.
And when I do the plagiarism check, if I have around approximately 1% from 40 different articles, so there would be a plagiarism of around 35%. So would that still be considered as plagiarism? Around 1% from 40 different articles.
Yeah, actually here in the whenever we are communicating the manuscript to the review papers, either it may be for the books or for the any such review articles, even sometime in most of those publishers, including the Elsewhere or even in the Springer also, they will permit even the 40%, 45% also the similarity up to 40, 45, even beyond that also they'll permit. But the thing is, the individual one, it should not be more than 1%. The individual, whatever it shows, no, at the end when you are looking at the final similarity chart,
Correct.
it is showing the suppose 45%, and then individual wise it is showing
Individual percentage. Yeah.
10%, 6%, 3%,
Correct.
3%, and 1%. So
Correct.
the top one, the highest is, if it is 1%, then they don't mind even in the,
And that is still fine then.
so they will accept that. But
Okay.
always my suggestion is, when you are writing the covering letter, in the covering letter you mention that the entire manuscript has been screened through the this particular software, and it has
Okay.
showed 25% of similarity with individual one with the maximum of 1%.
1%. Okay. So in covering letter, it's better we mention clearly.
Covering letter always we have to mention, even in the
Sure.
if it is not a, if it is a research paper, I mean, if it is not a review paper but a research paper, in that case also it is always best to mention that the manuscript has been it is showing 15% or 12%. So that is why, otherwise what happens, the because nowadays the moment once you submit the manuscript, the editorial team or the editorial office member, they will feed your manuscript for the Turnitin software or other suitable softwares.
Okay.
And then if they find some 15% or even 13% also, 13%, so they will be highly disappointed on that particular publication. Provided if you have not mentioned, but if you have mentioned that the manuscript is 14%, then
Then it's fine.
Then that is like a it's a plus point for your manuscript.
Okay, sure. Okay, sir. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Always you please mention in the
Cover letter.
Covering letter always, and also if any of the research, any of the diagram, if it is manipulated, I mean manipulated in the sense the contrast has been increased. It may be your own manuscript. It may be from your own paper, or the maybe from others, from anywhere it is. And if you are using that, so again in the covering letter you mention that this particular figure number 3 has been taken from this one, and we have also taken we have cited that particular one, and the license also has been obtained. So that sentence also has to be there.
Okay.
So
fine, sir. Thank you.
That is a research ethics. That is also the research ethics.
Okay.
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
Sir, I just wanted to know what this research ethics say about self-plagiarism. Because when we hear this word self-plagiarism, in some universities, they say it is acceptable. In some universities, it is not acceptable. That means, for an example, for my thesis, writing the PhD thesis, I am referring to the contents of my own previous publications.
Correct.
So what this research ethics say about self-plagiarism?
No, the self-plagiarism is also, this is also part of a plagiarism only. This is also, that's what I mentioned in the previous one. If a figure which is taken from our own published paper, suppose we have published a manuscript 2 years back in one of the journal, the same figure I am incorporating in the fresh submission, only the same figure. So that is also, the self-plagiarism is also not permitted. But with the licensing, obtaining the license from the previous journal, previous publisher, I mean, from them the license, obtaining the license, and always it is better to mention in the while communicating to the editor for the fresh submission, you mention that this particular figure has been taken from that source and it has been cited, as well as this is from our own manuscript, but the citation has been done and the license also has been obtained. So that is the research ethics which need to be followed. Then for the thesis, Usually up to about 20%. I don't know. Different universities have the different standards. May I know how much VTU has maintained? About 20%?
About 20%, sir.
20%. So some universities or some institutions even up to 30% also they permit. So there particularly one need to follow the universities or the whichever institute they belong. Whatever the policy is there, that need to be followed strictly. So since the VTU has mentioned 20%, and if you belong to the VTU, so strictly you have to mention 20% maximum, including the self-plagiarism. If it is 30%, that 30% includes the your self-plagiarism part also. So self-plagiarism you cannot consider as a separate one. I hope you.
Yes, sir. Got it, sir. Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
20% VTU has mentioned. VTU has mentioned 20%. So your overall is suppose let us say 25%. In that 6% is yourself. Suppose for example. So that is not permitted. The 20% including your whatever self plagiarized part are there, including that 20%, that has to be strictly mentioned. So institute guidelines has to be followed here. Institute or the
Good evening.
yeah.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, sir. This is Dr. Vincent from St. Joseph Engineering College.
Good evening, doctor.
This is regarding the publication of a paper in a book. Are we able to publish our own paper, which is already been published? Because in a as a chapter in a publication, a book publication. Because there are a number of book publications come and ask, saying that this paper has been well accepted and that can be published as a chapter in the international books. Are we able to do it directly with the same title, or with the difference in the title and with some additional information? Can we publish this as a
strictly speaking, as per the research ethics, we are not supposed to, whatever our previously published paper in any of the other journal, in any of the book, the same thing cannot be published. That is the research ethics, strictly speaking. Suppose if it is published, then you must be ready to face the consequences which will be held in the future. It may not be now, or it may not be in 2 years, it may be after 5 years or 10 years later also. As you have seen in the case of that osteoporosis that which was published in the Lancet. So it was after 8 or 9 years later. That was found after 8 or 9 years later. So till those 9-10 years, everything was smoother. But later, after 9 or 10 years later, suddenly it came into the picture. It came into the limelight. So that is highly riskier part. So I don't recommend any of the researchers to publish the same thing into the book. And at the same time, there are maybe some foreign publisher also might have approached you online. Your thesis can be converted into a publication. Can be converted into a book, completely in a book. So that is also, strictly speaking, that is also not permitted, because your thesis is it is an asset of your institute or your university or wherever you belong, whichever research organization. And you need to take the approval from them. Then only, if the institute, if it approves according to the research ethics, if the institute give the approval, then only you can go for you can give the green signal to those publisher to publish your thesis into a book.
In case we are able to take the approval from the corresponding publications, then we are able to.
I didn't get your question.
In case we get the approval from the corresponding publications, then we are able to publish.
But the thesis will be it is
not thesis, maybe a paper, especially the paper, because number of times, the mails come saying that, this paper is accepted in this journal. It can be published as a chapter in international book.
So you have to take the approval from both the side. First is wherever it was published, 2 years back or last year, whenever it was published in whichever book. So you have to get the first the right on the license from them. Then the second one is while communicating it to these publishers, those who are approaching you, for them also you have to mention. But the first thing here, the important thing is from the first one, obtaining the license.
Yeah.
And everything, these things to be in the clear emails. You get a clear response from the editorial office that they give the complete permission to you to publish that in the same content into a book. So this part need to be completely in the written part through the authorized email from the editorial office.
Okay, sir.
Otherwise, in future, the candidate will be in a problem. Definitely, the candidate will be in a problem in future. And
Okay,
we
sir.
don't know
Thank
when
you.
it may be. We don't know when it may be. It may be in the next month or maybe after 5-6 years later also, that may be possible. So all such precautions need to be strictly followed.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
So if one is following all the research
Ajay.
ethics, all the
ऊपर आना है
yeah, please, yeah, continue.
Anushree ma'am, please
आज
continue.
पकड़ो
Yes, madam, please.
Oh, I think by mistake it is switched on.
So as long as if we are following all the research ethics, so we need not worry at all.
Okay, sir. So I think it's the time to conclude. So thank you, sir, for your wonderful session.
Thank you very much, sir. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Okay, so you have given insight on father's perspective on how why to publish and what is the publishing priorities, and you have highlighted the research integrity and the various organizations that governs the that gives the guidelines to maintain the research integrity. And later on, you have focused on data fabrication. What are the different effects of a fabricated data set, and you have given various case studies that will really helpful for the research scholars and also the research guides, how they can continue with and what not to do. So the effect, this case study is really helpful for us for the future conduct of the research. You have also mentioned about the misconduct that we may be possible in the research field. The need for the zero tolerance policy, that is also you have highlighted. The 3 strategies to avoid the plagiarism, quoting, paraphrasing and summarizing. Definitely these tips will be definitely helpful for us. So thank you for your sharing your knowledge and expertise on the area of the research and research ethics and publication misconduct. Thank you, sir. On behalf of the SJEC, St. Joseph Engineering College and the organizing team, thank you very much.
Thanks, sir, for this wonderful opportunity. And I really, I'm apologizing once again for the slight delay in starting as because of some technical reason. And my special thanks I would like to give our the Digital Library Center staff, Mr. Ashok Hebbar, as well as the Professor Angdi, who is the Chief Librarian, for their for arranging this wonderful facilities and giving this this particular wonderful venue for this particular FDP. So thank you one and all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. So I request all the participants to join for the tomorrow's sessions at 9:30. Thank you.